So, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Dr. Matthew Fogg, former Chief Deputy U.S Marshal, retired now, and you are in the middle of facing, quite frankly, the United States government. And so we are here just to give you an opportunity to let the people at home know kind of what it is that you're doing, and even a little bit maybe how they can get involved as well.
Right.
So to get started, what exactly is happening? If you could let the folks know at home.
Well, my background, as you said, I'm a retired Chief Deputy U.S Marshal. I did 30 years, total of 32 years in government, 30 years as U.S Marshals. And once I got on board, right out of the academy, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia, I began to notice things that weren't right when it came down to racially. I saw the racial divide within our department, U.S Marshals. Now, we fall under the U.S Department of Justice, so that's our supervising agency, most powerful government in the world. We're talking about Justice Department. And for me, when I got on board, once I started noticing the double standards of law enforcement, who we went after, how we targeted, how we did our what we call our enforcement operations and everything. It seemed we were targeting black communities, all of that stuff I was noticing. But I remember one big thing right when I came out of the academy. I went to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. Best training in the world. And I remember when I got to my duty station, the first thing the manager, my white manager, he told me, he said, "Fogg, I know y'all had all that fancy training in Georgia and Glencoe." He said, but look, you can let a lot of that go because this is how we do it here. So basically what he was telling me, there was a culture in place of doing things the way they want to do them. And all that training was out the window. That's why I tell people a lot of times, they say, "Well, do you need better training?" No, it's not the training. We had the best training in the world. But it's the culture that takes over. Okay. And if the culture says, for example, we had one little thing was, if you run from us, ain't no giving up. We're gonna beat you behind. We're gonna whoop you. And of course, I didn't believe in that. I didn't want to go along with that. But that's the way the culture had it.
Right.
And if you did, say you went and said something or reported how they treated somebody, now the system had a way of turning on you. So once I started seeing that, and then I had an incident where a white manager was known to be racist in his application of responsibilities and duties, and he seemed to target astute African Americans. Now, I came on with a 4-year degree in 1978.
Okay.
So I was a little different than a lot of my class because I had a 4-year degree.
Right.
And so
Black excellence. That was the voice you gave her. Black excellence.
Right, there you go, black excellence. So, yes, I was most likely to succeed. And so, when this chief started, when he targeted me, people were telling me, "Look, Fogg, just try to avoid him. Stay away from him because he'll target you, and you're too young, you're new on the job. We don't want to see you have to go through these things." But he did target me, and bottom line was, he accused me of doing some stuff that I didn't do. So I filed a racial discrimination complaint on him. And that's something I no. That was 7 years into my job. I'm filing a racial discrimination complaint, which you don't do.
Right.
You know, because all that can mess up your career.
Right.
But I did it anyway. That was in 1985. Had you told me in 85 that thing would have followed me all the way through to today, I would have said no way. But that's what has happened. Now, what it did, it made me become an advocate for racial justice. It made me begin to really understand that it just wasn't my job to enforce the law against the people who they told us to enforce against, but we also had to enforce it amongst our own rank and file. So that's what I decided to do, and that's when I took on, when I filed that racial discrimination complaint, I was really enforcing law against the rank and file, which then in turn caused me to become a target. And in that process, it took 13 years for me to get to federal court. The agency didn't want to settle. We go all the way to federal court. Now, in that process, we involved a federal judge. Federal judge, he was Michael K. Moore. He was the director of the U.S. Marshal Service. He pulled my name off the certification list, the top of the list, and put a white guy over me who was the last guy on the cert list. Couldn't tie my shoelaces and qualifications. But once he put that guy over me, I also filed a complaint on that. Well, he goes on and later becomes a federal judge in Miami. Today, he's the chief judge of the Southern District of Miami, Michael K. Moore. Presently, right now, as we speak.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So, of course, the government made settlement offers to me and everything. But my goal was I wanted them to fix the entire system that had racial animus towards African American Deputy U.S. Marshals, which also translated to how we acted on the streets as well. Of course, if you're working with somebody that's racist next to you, you know what he's going to do to the people on the street that look like you.
Of course.
So, having said that, we went all the way to trial. I won in 1998. All this stuff is online. You can go to my website, bigotswithbadges.com. Shows all of this. But one of the things I remember before I went to trial and how I got that name, Bigots with Badges, was the New York Post did a story on us. And we thought we were going to be on like the 50th page or the 30th page. We didn't know we were going to be on the front page of the New York Post with the U.S. Marshal's badge in the middle, Bigots with Badges.
Wow.
In 1997.
Wow.
So when that happened, the Congressional Black Caucus here in Washington, D.C., led at that time by Congresswoman Maxine Waters. She was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. She decided to have hearings and brought all law enforcement, federal law enforcement together, black federal law enforcement agents, had us all to come up on Capitol Hill and to testify about what was happening. So we had FBI, DEA, U.S. Customs, U.S. Marshals.
Wow.
All of us were up there testifying about the issues that we were facing within our government jobs. So it wasn't just the marshals.
Right.
So it was systemic throughout. So out of those hearings, and at that time, Eric Holder was the Deputy Attorney General.
Oh, okay.
So Eric Holder was there.
Okay.
And the heads of each one of those organizations, of FBI, U.S. Marshals, U.S. Customs, and everybody was listening to all of us witnesses, the employees, come up and talk about what had happened to us.
Right.
And all that's on my website. There's a picture up there, matter of fact, me with the one white guy who testified, who aligned himself with us.
Really?
And he's holding up a rat that was a rubber rat that was given to him by some U.S. Marshals in the New York office when he blew the whistle on how they were talking about his black partner, how calling him nigga and all these other things, and asked him why you working with that nigga and all this thing.
Wow.
So, and his black partner was William Scott. Well, he's showing how they gave him this rat. They called it a prank.
It's a message.
Yeah, it's a message. It's organized crime.
Right.
I mean, basically, that's what you do in organized crime. You give somebody a rat. Well, this is what I said. I tell people all the time. When law enforcement gets it wrong, that's organized crime personified. Because, you know, we got the means, the ways to do what we need to do. And I think one of the Chief Justices said, Supreme Court Justice said, he said, the law enforcement officer is the more powerful than the President of the United States. Whoa. He said, because he can forfeit your freedom, your property, or your life at his discretion. And that's true. So he would
say that again, because I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so he said the law enforcement officer is more powerful than the President of the United States in that.
Wow.
He can forfeit your property, your freedom, or your life at his discretion.
At their discretion.
Right.
Insane.
Right.
I never really thought about it like that.
That's
crazy.
The power that we have. And that's what you see every day when you see what's happening on the street.
Right.
I mean, if I determine I thought you had a gun, whatever, I can shoot you. And we see it all the time. The problem is, why is it just happening this disproportionate number to blacks than it is to whites?
Right.
Should be equally, distributed because we're making mistakes, right? So we begin to see that there's more to it than just I made a mistake.
Right.
But the reality of it was being on the inside and speaking up. Now you're going against what is called the infamous blue wall of silence. And so, well, what is that blue wall of silence? The blue wall of silence is, in law enforcement, we are a culture, a good old boy network. And what happens is, and we, just as I said, my manager told me, Fogg, forget all that stuff you learned in the academy. This is how we do it here.
Right.
What happens is we mutate into these cultures, and then before you know it, we start having our own little groups. Like you saw that, I forgot the name of that group down there that killed the young man, Tyree Nicholas.
Oh, the Scorpion Unit.
The Scorpion Unit.
In Memphis, yep.
Well, in the U.S. Marshal, we had the Killer Bees. Every law enforcement organization in this country, all over the United States, has their little units with a nickname. And all you got to go to you can go to any law enforcement department and what's the nickname of your unit, and somebody will know it.
Wow.
You know, Girl Boys, whatever. I'm just saying, all of them had them. Rampart in L.A.
In L.A., I just learned about the Rampart.
They had their units. So New York City. So these are cultures that develop within the law enforcement rank and file. And what happens is, sooner or later, that power grows to the point where we forget who's our boss, and we're the running the show. And a good example of that is when you look at what happened to Mayor de Blasio in New York City when half the police department turned their back on him, when they was upset with him about him telling his black sons to be careful when you go out there and do what the police tell you to do. The Police Benevolent Association, all these unions, they got together and said, well, you're making us look like we are out here doing racially bad things. And so they told them to turn their back on him. And they did just that. But the point I'm making is, if they can turn their back on their commander-in-chief, imagine what they'll do to a law enforcement officer working in their rank and file.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, I'm just saying to you.
Right.
So the bottom line was, it showed you the power that law enforcement has within its rank and file, how it controls the show.
Right.
And by that they will, like I said, they turn their back on Mayor de Blasio. That's their commander-in-chief. You do something like that in the military, see what happens to you. Turn your back on your military. Well, this is paramilitary.
Right.
So the reality of it is that once I decided that I was going to take on this system and expose the racism through EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, through complaints and so forth, then I'm going against the blue wall of silence. You know, you keep your mouth shut, folks. Go along with it. Don't make no waves. And if we do offer you a settlement, take it and move on. So when I said no to all of the above, that means now I'm going to go to federal court. And I went into court and I won my case in '98. It was a significant landmark win because it was against the U.S Department of Justice. First time somebody's ever won something to that magnitude of what I won. $4 million.
As an individual,
As an individual.
Right.
So, but the agency then again circled its wagons on me and decided to appeal it for 10 years. So you win in '98, I don't get paid till 2008. And in that period of time, they weaponized our arrests against me. They brought them in to try to jam me up. They did everything to me. They reduced my findings, my what the jury said. The judge refused to give me 3 years of back pay. Knocked that off. Said I had unclean hands because I went up on Capitol Hill and testified that racial profiling in black communities. They said, well, he said he was a chief deputy, and at that time, his case was still in appeal, so he wasn't. So therefore, he had unclean hands.
What?
Yes, everything you could think of, they did. They came after me. So it shows you how the system works, and all that stuff is still pending today, which I'm disputing.
Right.
So in the meantime, while I was doing my individual claims, I filed a class action complaint because I said, well, the same thing they're doing this to me, they're doing this to all the other African Americans. So, man, the only way you're going to prove this, you got to file a class action because they weren't filing it.
Right.
So I had to do it. So I filed that under my name. Well, in 2004, it came to fruition because I had to filed something to indicate that they was not processing the class action complaint. And that's one of the things that I've alleged in my complaint, that justice delayed is justice denied.
Of course.
They'll delay stuff. In the meantime, while they're delaying things, they're coming after you to discredit you.
Right.
So that if it ever does come to hearing or whatever, now they've done things to discredit you. So you're up against a litany of nefarious acts coming from government officials that would be seen in any other situation a conspiracy, but they won't call it that.
Right.
But it would be seen a conspiracy in any other situation where you're getting one thing after the next, one thing after the next happening to you. So again, with all these things happening, then the class action. So we start getting that processed in 2004.
Right.
Now, it had already been sitting for 10 years, but they started the real action on in 2004.
Right.
That has gone now all the way up until today. Still no hearing, still outstanding, still litigation going on. Now, how in the world do you get a class action going from 94 till today, which we're talking about 28, 29 years? It's outstanding to this day, and we're saying, how could something like this happen? This is the U.S. Department of Justice, because in all of our claims, we have to name the head of the U.S. Attorney General, the head of the U.S. Department of Justice, as employees under the Justice Department. So I've named, I think I'm up to 13 United States Attorney Generals that I've named since 1985.
Good grief.
Yes, and just officially been named. So, and under 7 United States presidents, it's the 7th one. So it shows you not just the longevity, but how they have delayed it and how they have tried to skate on around what we call race discrimination, which is the most horrible thing you could think of in the Justice Department, because we're supposed to be an organization that is the Justice Integrity Agency.
Right.
Where did I leave off?
Oh, yeah. So I was actually going to ask you a question, just kind of lead into the class action suit. So with all of that leading up into where you were at now, and then, of course, in between time, you've been a 9/11 first responder. You were a frequent CNN, MSNBC, and a plethora of other networks as a law enforcement analyst. And then, so you have all this background now leading up to today, where you're currently leading 10,000 black marshals in a class action suit against the Department of Justice. So how does all of that fall into play when you've been speaking about this, you've written about this, you've been talking about it, and so now you were literally taking the fight to them. So what happens now?
Well, right now, of course, the class action has been in litigation. But last year, we got in the front. We made the front page of the Washington Post in January of 22. When that happened, that put this whole case now on international stage.
Right.
Where now all of a sudden the Justice Department comes running to the table and says, listen, we want to settle. So what happened was we went into settlement discussion. Now my attorney, the law firm has been handling it, but I haven't been totally pleased myself with the way things have been going. Without saying what, I just haven't been pleased. But the reality of it is that what I decided to do now is, well, we're going to take this and we got to put some more publicity on it. It was the law firm that brought the Washington Post in on it. So they opened that door. So I said, well, now we need a little more publicity because I don't want this case to just settle for literally nothing and make it like black lives just don't matter.
Right.
And we want to send a message across the bow of the U.S. Department of Justice that you don't do this. If you do, there's a price to pay. And we want to set a precedent that is a good precedent for the future if somebody decides they want to do this again.
Right.
So right now where we are is we're in settlement discussions. So we're trying to come up with what are all of the proper things that need to be done to abate this situation so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
But in the meantime, I'm calling it out in the sense that As long as this stuff is outstanding, this is the very reason why state and local police departments do the same thing. Because they're following suit saying, if the Justice Department can get away with systemic racism on its rank and file, how do you expect us to do any better?
Right.
So that's where we are with that. So right now, I've been talking to some social justice and networks and groups and try to determine how can we fix the system itself. Because of course with the Tyree Nicholas murder, the one just recently, I think William Derrick or Darrell Williams that just happened in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we go all the way back to George Floyd Act, everything. All this stuff is now culminating to where it falls under the Department of Justice, and I think that's where you're going to fix it. You can't count on state and local departments to fix this issue. It's got to start with the President of the United States and with the Justice Department. So that's where we are right now, trying to bring light to this thing. Of course, I've got a website out, bigotswithbadges.com. I've got other groups that are now interested. One of the things we're hoping to do, we've been talking to some civil rights leaders. I'm hoping to get others involved, such as maybe Ben Crump, Al Sharpton, some of the people that can get them involved, because the only way we're going to fix these issues that are going on around the country is somebody has to hold the Justice Department to task on this.
Right.
And that's where I am. My case right now is Matthew Fogg versus Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, United States Attorney General. So that's where we're spearheading this.
Okay. So I did want to ask you one thing, just in terms of even being former law enforcement, kind of more on like a personal question in terms of the way that you kind of think about different things. Was there always kind of like a weird mental dichotomy or even like a cognitive dissonance where you knew you were part of law enforcement, you knew there were some things happening towards your own people that were abominable to say the least, and at the same time you were part of the system that's doing it? So did you feel like because of the fight that you were doing, you were in your place with that, or was there any, because I've heard this happen with black officers before, where they kind of feel like a guilt or different things, or it's like, do you feel like a traitor or anything like that? So what was your thoughts while going through that? Was this, what did you think about your role in all of that?
Well, I thought my role was to stand up for what was right. And once I began to see that we had this culture of indifference that was taking place and that was doing these racially nefarious acts on people, communities of color, I felt it was my place. I had to speak up. Because I felt like if I didn't, then that would be on my hands. That blood would be on my hands. So, yeah, you're in a culture that says you don't speak up. So, but I couldn't worry about that. I was the guy that came up under, Christianity and believing that, God says, hey, do the right things and help those that are down and out, those that are downtrodden and so forth. So I believe that was my call, to step up to the plate and to make sure that we get it right. Some people say, well, Fogg, wait till you get in charge. Wait till you become the director or some high level official. I said, well, let's say that when they're doing that to your son or your daughter, till somebody wait. I said, you're going to want somebody to do something right away.
Right.
So the issue is, and I used to always tell people that, I said, guys, one of the examples I used was, if somebody came to you and said, all right, I was a cop, I was on the scene, I saw them do these terrible things to your son or your daughter, these cops, and they used too much force, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do what they did. And I'm letting you know, I said, probably the first thing out your mouth would be, well, why didn't I stop them? Why are you telling me? Why didn't you step up to the plate and stop them? And if I tell you, well, because I'm scared, I was afraid, that's not going to fly.
Of course.
So, but that's the reality. And so one of the things that I'm glad you had, that was a good question, because the reason why, there's some things that some legislation we're trying to get passed.
Right.
One of the things, the George Floyd Protection Act that went through Congress and was shot down at the U.S. Senate. Right. Because I think it was Senator Tim Scott would not let it get out of committee. And so when you look at that bill had provisions in it, no chokeholds. Right. Getting rid of qualified immunity. Body cameras, and it just went down to a litany of things that could help to make the system fairer. Right. Well, now we also have another bill coming through called the Seagulls Act, which gives law enforcement officers protection who come forward and blow the whistle. And
Wow.
I'm looking to start a program myself, nonprofit organization, that will also give law enforcement officers who blow the whistle resources, financial resources, legal representation, so forth.
Yep.
So the Seagulls Act, which brings protection for law enforcement officers that are willing to blow a whistle, because I believe, and I know I can tell you the truth, the only way you're going to fix this problem is you got to give law officers from the reference group, the guys on the inside, same way we give mafia and organized crime. The only way federal government is able to adjudicate these crimes, U.S. attorneys, FBI, and all of them, able to do their thing, was you had to have witnesses from the reference group coming forward.
Right.
The same way in law enforcement. You got to have cops coming forward saying, yes, I saw them hit him this many times, or he didn't have to shoot, or these are things, or I know he's got some racial animus in his mindset. The bad cops know who the bad cops are. I say that all the time. And if you give, I'm sorry, let me correct that. The good cops know who the bad cops are. I say that all the time.
And wait, say it again, because that's right. Powerful.
The good cops know who the bad cops are.
Because I've heard that argument so much that it's like, oh, it's good cops and bad cops, but they make it seem like it's a thing that just happens.
Right, no. I mean, the good cops know, because we work with these guys. Everybody works together. So you know their attitude. You know the things they say amongst each other. You know when they're doing something out there, planting drugs. A lot of good cops know bad cops out there planting drugs and getting their numbers up and doing certain things to get their numbers up. But they don't say anything about it. They just move on and just let it go. That's on him. No, it's not on him. What he did, and by you knowing about it, he done just messed up somebody's life, some son or somebody's daughter's life, and they got now a felony or something on their record, and you could have stopped it. So these are the things that we're saying, that a lot of good cops, that's why I said there's no such thing as a good cop when you know a cop is bad. Your job was to serve and protect our community, therefore you have to point him out as well. But they lose control, they lose focus, and so that's why, again, when you got your police association, the fraternal order police, and all these benevolent police associations, they all know, we all know, they try to make it look like it's just a few bad apples. You can't have just a few bad apples in law enforcement. That's like saying there's a few bad pilots on the plane. You know, a few bad, getting in a stadium telling everybody there's 100,000 people, and you get on mic, look, everybody's good, but just a few bad cops in here. Everybody gonna go home. Trust me, and they might stampede. I'm saying you can't have that. You can't. Once you identify there's a few bad apples, if you can't tell me who the apple is, then as far as I'm concerned, that's one of them pulling me over. You got to be able to identify who they are.
I remember Muhammad Ali kind of making that same analysis when he was talking about, if all these snakes were to come in through the door, and then somebody said, like, well, 98 of them won't bite you, but there's 2 of them that are probably deadly poisonous. He's like, well, I'm not going to sit there and try to figure out which one is going to bite me.
I'm gone. So that's what has happened in law enforcement. The few bad apples theory has been one that has contaminated the whole department. And until you can tell us there's no more bad ones here, we got to suspect them all. And I'm a U.S. Marshal retired saying that. So and I work with law enforcement departments from L.A., Chicago, New York, all across the country. I know the culture that's out there. And that culture says, again, you do it your way. Another thing that's happened is when suddenly, all of a sudden, emphasis, because of the cameras, started focusing on police, the George Floyd and Eric Gardner, and all these different things we see. What happened was, a lot of the police started feeling like we was throwing them under the bus. So what they started telling them was, slow down, don't investigate. So they put the word on a few, because I had informants, people that I know going way back. I had much calling me up saying, Fogg, the word is out on the street. The police kill who you want. We ain't investigating nothing.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, that's why the spike went up. The spike went up because police started slowing down and putting the word out there. They weren't investigating anything, especially if it was in our communities. Now, you ain't going to go in a white community and do that. The black communities, It was like the world was on the street. So everybody that had a vendetta wanted to get even with somebody. It was open season.
Wow.
And that's why it spiked. That's why all of a sudden it went up. Because the word was police are backing off. We call it the blue flu. They call it everything. But the point is law enforcement officers are backing off from their duty. So that's what tells you. And they said a lot of cops are quitting. Yeah, you would quit if you knew you can't get away with the stuff you were doing before. Sure, you quit. People say, well, qualified immunity. Of course. Qualified immunity is not just something to say we want to attack police officers. It's saying if you get out there and you violate somebody's civil rights, constitutional rights, would you learn constitutional law? And like I said, I tell people all the time, I don't need anybody to tell me what it means to abuse someone.
Right.
I know what I would feel like I was being abused.
Right.
I don't need anybody to teach me that. But the problem is on the street is I knew I can get away with it as a cop. And I can just simply say, you did something, you were wiggling, you moved the wrong way. Anything, just make up some stuff. That's what we learn. In the academy, you learn, all the time you're learning the right way to do things, you're also learning how you can mutate around it. And so that's what happens in law enforcement. You learn real quick how you can get an arrest out of anybody. You can, like they said, you can arrest a ham, you can indict a ham sandwich. Somebody said that. You can figure out a way to just lie. And if it's your word as a cop, if there's a cop's word against the citizen's word, most of the time they're gonna believe the cop.
Right. Right.
And if the lawyer, nobody's done any due diligence to show that cop is lying, you go in jail. Simple as that. And a lot of young men, a lot of people have gone to jail in this country over the years, and now these stories are coming out where cops admitting they planted drugs. They did all these departments,
and it's decades later after they being locked up.
Right, and if you did a pattern at the Justice Department, started doing pattern and practice investigations, especially on these major police departments, they would uncover a whole lot of dirty rocks where people are under those rocks that should have never been there.
So, man, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Dr. Matthew Fogg, it is a pleasure having you here on the show, but even more so, not only just speaking about it, because really this is really a drop in the bucket of your life's work.
Right.
And then, of course, with the book that's coming out, Bigots with Badges, go to bigotswithbadges.com to check out all that information, all of the links on what Dr. Fogg has been doing for the past, well over 30 years, really.
Right.
And then even on top of that, being able to show folks like this is how you kind of take that fight to a legitimate level, because a lot of us think that if we just protest our local police department and change a couple of things, that's it. And we don't realize that even with law enforcement, there's a top-down hierarchy. They don't operate independently. They don't get funding independently or anything like that.
Right.
And then so for you to kind of, quite frankly, what a lot of people, even people that I know, people that I'm close to, even the way that the streets would think about it, like you're confirming all these things that we all thought were conspiracies, and you're confirming as concrete evidence. No, you're not crazy. This is exactly what happens, and let me tell you more. Right. And so we really don't understand that when we say systemic racism, it is not because there's 1, 2, 3 white people that decided. It is a system that is created, and it doesn't matter if black people are involved, white people are involved, the victims are still Negroes.
That's right.
And so to be able to draw that conclusion for that, to be able to take that to, quite frankly, the rulers of the land unashamedly, and then have been doing this for so long, I mean, I'm honored to even just be in your presence. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. You can go check out Dr. Fogg's website, as well as all the other materials, as well as his, how many, 5,000 interviews have you done? And check out all that stuff on YouTube, Google him, and everything else.
So there's a YouTube channel. But I was going to say to you, the elephant in the room, which people need to understand, the most common denominator is race. And you hear this expression, walking, breathing, talking while black. Now, I mean, every aspect of life in this country is while black. And you'll find that when you look at the disparities in every aspect of life, you find where blacks are involved, there's a disparate impact on blacks as opposed to whites in any category. I mean, whether it's getting a loan, student loans, I don't care what it is. The arrest, the marijuana rate arrest, the prisoner rates, everything is a disparity on blacks. That's not happened chance. That happens to be saying we're still a very racially divided country.
It's on purpose.
In the Justice Department, if you got the lead law enforcement organization that's got this decades of racism, by now 10,000 blacks, I would think when you get that many black folks, you would, Houston, we got a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So somebody would say that. This is just not a few people just whistling Dixie. This is a culture that's permeated our Justice Department. That's infiltrated our Justice Department. And we had FBI came out a report, said that right-wing extremists have infiltrated our law enforcement.
Yep.
So it's all, the evidence is there. Just what are we going to do, Mr. Biden? This is in your corner now. You the one who got this one. This is on you now. And you need to call folks like myself and others who are conscientious, objective individuals for law enforcement to come to the plate and say, how can we start to abate this problem?
Man, that's how you do it right there. So if you could...
Matthew Fogg, step away from the vehicle. But listen, I'm going to give a shout out to Keem Jones Content Collection for producing this show and putting it together, because we need individuals like Keem Jones to be able to put the word out and put the message out that people need to hear from professionals, people that care about this country, care about individuals, black, white, no matter what race you are. But we want the truth to be told. Thank you, Brother Jones, for giving me this opportunity.